All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome everyone to the Savvy Sessions live webinar this week. We're going to be talking about everything co-hosting this week. If you don't know what a co-host is, we're going to dive into that and talk all about it. So, I'm going to go ahead and present my screen here so we can get going. Okay, so before we get started on should you co-host your STR or hire a co-host or become a co-host, I want to talk about what is a co-host. In the short-term rental industry, forever and ever and ever, we've had full service property managers, and full service property managers have typically been local people that have, team on the ground, they live locally, and they have been hired for years to manage short-term rentals, vacation rentals, traditional vacation rental markets primarily. But they do, you can get a property manager for long-term rentals. But in the short-term rental industry, 20 years ago, before technology really, went into play, you'd show up to a vacation rental market, you'd go to that property manager's office, you'd probably pick up a key, go to your condo, go to your house. That's how it used to work. So you really needed to have a local, larger property management company to manage your vacation rental. And then the internet came and all of these amazing apps and all of this technology has come, and you no longer need to do that. So you can manage your vacation rental yourself from thousands of miles away. Or if you're in a position that you can't manage yourself, then you can hire a co-host. Or if you want to become a co-host, you can do that as well. What are the advantages of a co-host? And should you do a co-host? Like I said, the biggest difference is many co-hosts do not live locally. So I personally co-host properties in both the Florida market, in the Panhandle, and in Branson, Missouri. My permanent residence is in St. Louis. I am obviously a real estate agent in the Panhandle, and I'm down here a lot. But even before I was a realtor in this area, I co-hosted in this market and owned and self-managed in this market. So nothing new. And it's definitely something that everybody can do. So let's dive a little bit into co-hosting and what it's all about. Again, my name is Joe Rohne. I am a savvy STR agent for the Florida Panhandle. I handle everything from Destin to Miramar, Panama City Beach, all the way to the Forgotten Coast. I own a short-term rental here in Panama City Beach. I also co-host 9 additional properties. Actually, I'm in a new property that we're going to be co-hosting that we are in the middle of a redesign. And this is going to be our 10th co-hosting property in the market. If you guys didn't know, our Savvy team continues to grow. We are hiring the best real estate agents nationwide in each market. And not necessarily always just real estate agents. We're hiring investors that invest in real estate and have short-term rentals and manage short-term rentals that are short-term rental experts to join our team so we can help investors like you really find great properties for you to invest in. This is the newest look of our team. And I know for a fact there's 2 new agents adding to this because my team here in the Florida Panhandle is growing, and we have 2 new agents going to be coming on here very soon. All right, so what is co-hosting? So co-hosting is essentially property management, right? There is a couple differences between property management and co-hosting. And, just like if you're a property manager, so if you hire a traditional property manager, they are pretty much handling everything for you. You can pretty much be 100% hands off. They're going to collect all the money, pay all the taxes, handle all the reservations. And at the end of the month, they're going to write you a little check on what's left over. Okay. So after they pay the maintenance man, pay the cleaners, take their fees out, you're going to get a check as an owner on what's left over. In the co-host, it's a little bit different. So if you're hiring a co-host or if you're a co-host, the listing is traditionally in the owner's name. So the money is flowing to the owner of the property. The co-host, as a co-host, I'm still managing everything. I'm still handling the cleaners. I'm still handling the maintenance man. I'm still handling all guest communication. through Airbnb, Verbo, building direct booking websites, all the different things that a regular property manager would do, we are doing as co-hosts. We just don't collect the money. The money goes to the owner, and then the owner pays a fee for our services at the end of the month. Why do we do it this way? A couple of reasons. Number one, legality. Some states require you to have a real estate broker's license to be a full service property manager and do trust accounting. When you're not collecting any money, you don't necessarily, in many states, don't need to have that broker's license because you're not handling all of the funds. Everything's going to the owner. You're just handling the guest communication and everything else. So that's one of the number one differences. One of the second biggest differences is most co-hosts are going to be smaller boutique. So, your traditional property managers that are having 50, 80, 100, 200 plus properties, how are they managing your property? Okay, who's assigned to do your revenue management on your property? Who's assigned to do your listing optimization and make sure everything is perfect? They have 25 employees that are scattered to go to all these houses all the time, which is great. But are you really getting the service that you want by hiring a big time property management company where a co-host a lot of times only handles 7, 8, 10, maybe up to 20 properties? There are some co-hosts that have more, so I'm not saying there aren't, but it's traditionally a little bit more boutique. So for me and the owners that I co-host for, I'm able to do that revenue management on each property, and each property gets its own Facebook page and Facebook ads and extra little marketing to help them get booked. And we can do listing optimization. And one of the biggest things that we do as co-hosts, my wife and I, is we help the owners redesign and make their property stand out. As we all know, in the new short-term rental world, you cannot be average anymore. You have to stand out. So we have that luxury to be able to help our owners do that. And there are many co-hosts out there that are doing the same thing. They're going into properties, helping owners spruce it up a little bit, put some accent walls, change some bedding around, whatever it may be. That's a lot of them are doing that. Not all, but a lot of them are doing it. You may ask yourself, okay, well, if they don't live locally, how are they handling this? Well, the same as you would handle it if you were self-managing. We have our teams on the ground. We have multiple handymen that we network with. We have multiple cleaning companies. We have our HVAC company and our pool companies and our lawn and landscape companies. We have already built those resources in that market so we can handle anything that comes our way as co-hosts to be able to take care of your property to the best ability. So yes, we do all the guest communication. We do all of the calendar management, everything, right? So on the flip side, if you are a short-term rental owner and you're interested to get into co-hosting, these are some of the things that you need to be able to have and need to be able to have set up if you're going to manage a property for someone else. I am a firm believer that a good co-host is somebody that owns their own short-term rental property, because when you own a short-term rental property and you start managing for others, you truly understand the ups and downs. You're understanding all the bills that come in, the whole works. There are some people out there that do co-hosting, and there's nothing wrong with hiring a co-host or doing co-hosting if you don't own properties, as long as you've done the research and you become an expert. Because at the end of the day, as co-hosts, we are really helping these owners manage possibly their retirement fund, right? Like some of these real estate investments are part of the owner's retirement fund and what they're planning on for their nest egg. So it's really important as co-hosts, we do the best job that we possibly can to be able to help them be profitable. So is co-hosting right for you? So if you own a property and you are interested in getting into co-hosting, do you have the time to manage other people's properties, right? I tell people all the time, if you're buying a short-term rental, 100% you should self-manage. You are going to be most successful if you self-manage and you learn the ins and the outs of the market that you're in and you can self-manage. We can probably self-manage one property in 2 to 3 hours a week. Doesn't take a lot of time. But when you start adding on co-hosting properties, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 5, or 10, that 2 to 3 hours a week turns into 5 to 7, maybe 10. No, it's not a 40-hour week job, but are you in a position that at any moment if there's a guest issue, that you can step away from your W-2 or whatever it is that you're doing and handle that for that client, because you're no longer just managing your property, you're managing for somebody else. Do you have your operations set up? Or are you struggling with your operations, right? So, the systems that you need to have in place before you decide to start co-hosting for somebody else, you need to make sure you have all of those systems in place. You need to make sure that you have, your PMS and all of your messaging in place and all of your team in place. All of that's really, really important. Um, the biggest thing that I tell everyone when you get into co-hosting is we're building a partnership, we're building a relationship with those owners. Those owners are looking for somebody that's to do a better job than they've had in the past. And they're looking for someone that can take care of their property like they would, because they just don't have the time to do it, right? But one of the really awesome things about co-hosting, and what I've seen a lot of people get into this industry for in short-term rentals, is it truly is a great way for you to scale your portfolio. Because if you're keeping your W-2 or you're keeping your, whatever your regular income is, and you're adding co-hosting properties and you're getting, on average 20% of the revenue, you could build it to where you're making an extra 50, 80, 100, $200,000 a year. And that's going to help you save more money quicker to purchase and buy more short-term rentals. That is truly the reason why I got into co-hosting from the beginning. I wanted a way to scale my portfolio, and I wanted to have an extra income stream. And adding the co-hosting business and being able to help other people helps me do that, number one. And number two, I'm also able to help these owners make more money, which is really, really awesome. So a lot of the owners that I've taken over for on co-hosting were losing money. They were struggling. Their property manager wasn't doing what they were supposed to do. And all of a sudden we came in, we made some changes, we made some modifications and started managing it like we do. And we're seeing big increases for them, and they're making money now instead of losing money, which in my opinion is the biggest win. So, as an owner, like I said, you have your local experience, you have your better guest experience. You as a co-host, because you're already self-managing, you're able to do things that you do with your personal house that you're self-managing, and you could do that to a handful of other properties as well. You're going to get better results just by doing those day in and day out things. It is in some ways, as a co-host, it can be a little bit more affordable than a full service property manager. That does not mean we charge less money, but what I see when I take over a lot of co-hosting properties or properties that came from a property management company is the property managers are really nickel and diming. And when I say that, like every little thing they're getting charged for, the company, the property management company is charging them extra for door lock fees and extra for any little maintenance items that can be quick things. Obviously we have handymen that go into properties, and if there's things that need to be fixed, we're going to have them fixed, and we're going to charge the owner for that stuff. But there's also a lot of stuff that can be done a lot less expensive than some of the bigger property managers do, which makes a big impact. So, the in co-hosting, on the flip side, if you were hiring somebody to co-host and you weren't going to self-manage, you're able to offload some of those day-to-day management tasks that you don't have time to do anymore. And it does give you an opportunity to earn a little bit more passive income without giving up complete control. One of the greatest things about having a co-host, when you own your listing, if you had to change to a new co-host or change property managers, in a traditional property manager, they own your listing. So when you fire them and you take over, either self-managing or hiring a co-host, you have to start over with a brand new Airbnb listing, a brand new Vrbo listing, and none of the reviews can be transferred, and you are stuck with a brand new property, even if it's a property that's been managed for 10 years fairly well and had, 500 reviews. Doesn't matter. So in that, you are able to keep your listing. When you hire a co-host or you're co-hosting, the listing is in your name. So if you were to make a change to a new co-host or make a change and start self-managing, you already have the listing. The listing stays with you, the reviews stay with you. You've built that rapport, and Verbo is one of the ones where this is really important because if you've ever started managing short-term rentals on Verbo, it takes time. Like Airbnb gives you a right out of the gate boost. You get 20% off the first 3 bookings and you can get into the top of the search rankings right away. They want you to be successful. Verbo rewarding their owners that have been with them for a long time. So those listings that have been there for 3, 5, 10 years are at the higher in the search rankings. No matter what you do, a new listing takes a little bit longer to get there. So if you were hiring a co-host, or if you're getting into co-hosting, whichever it is, things that you need to make sure you have. You got to be able to provide value. You got to have a contract. You cannot get into co-hosting with just a handshake, right? There needs to be very clear expectations on what you are doing, or if you're hiring a co-host, what they are doing for your property, right? So it's really, really important that you understand that and you don't just give your property to somebody because, they just started managing a property a month ago, or they just bought a property a month ago, or maybe they've done rental arbitrage, whatever it is. You need to make sure that they have a valid business, because as an owner, you're going to need to get reports from them to file taxes. You're going to need to have, tracking of, who's handling taxes. Typically the owner is still paying the taxes, but it's got to be put in the listing for you to charge the right tax. Like there's a lot of little things. Having a contract that clearly defines everything that the co-host is doing for you is really important. So if you're going to be a co-host, you need to have a real estate contract, or a co-hosting contract. Have a lawyer draw it up. You can go to ChatGPT and get a copy of one to start, and then take it to your local attorney and get it done. Another thing you're looking for if you're hiring a co-host is lack of experience in the STR or hospitality industry. Like I said, I love people that co-host that already own a short-term rental. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in that market. It just, if they own a short-term rental, they're self-managing and they know what they're doing because they're self-managing, right? So, I like to call people that are co-hosting that don't self-manage, that don't own their own, I like to call them keyboard warriors, right? And I have people, and I'm not saying everybody's a keyboard warrior, but for us, we actually go to our properties a minimum once every 3 months and do a personal walkthrough. Is your co-host that you hire from halfway across the world going to visit your property and know what's going on, right? So that can be a big thing. So having somebody that owns is going to be a huge, huge difference, and it's going to help you be more successful as an owner because they know what's going on. Another thing you're looking for is poor communication, slow response times. I will tell you, for me, if an owner is texting me, I'm usually responding within minutes, if not seconds. And the relationship, and this is one of the biggest things that I tell people when it comes to a property manager and a co-host. A lot of times the property manager, and this is the very first co-host property I took over, the owner said, one of my biggest complaints is when I have an issue at the house, I have to send an email to the property management company, and it might be 6 to 10 days or sometimes 48 hours, but it's usually days before I get a response to know what's going on. And my answer to him was, I said, if you ever send me an email that you have a problem with the property, I'm going to be offended. I want you to just pick up the phone and call me. This is my cell phone number. Like, this is my business. And I just want you to pick up the phone and call me or shoot me a text message. Let's work through it. And let's not wait 48 hours for you to be upset over something. Let's get it taken care of right away. So if you're talking to someone and they're not responding and being very responsive, definitely something that is a red flag. And then finally, not aligned on goals, pricing, guest types. These are some of the things that I have conversation with the owners. Of course, there are seasons. We have properties that do $1,500 a night in the summer that are getting $300 a night in January, and that's okay. But we do need to have goals, and we do need to have clear expectation of what's going on and the types of guests that we want to rent to. For me, we're okay with anyone over 18, but we do require a $500 security deposit and a verbal conversation. I have a conversation with any guest that's under 25 before they book, before we allow them in the house, to make sure they're going to be respectful and understand our rules. And we've had very, very good luck with that. There are some co-hosts or property managers out there that'll rent to anyone. They don't vet any guests, and then all of a sudden a guest checks out and you got $1,000 to $2,000 worth of damage because they didn't actually vet your guest or have a personal relationship. I try to not only communicate on platform, but I communicate a lot off platform with my guests. I really want to build a relationship because that's going to help them have a better experience and take care of our property even more because they have that. So, a little bit of a case study. So, we took over a property in May of 2024. So 1 year ago, actually 1 year ago today, my wife and I were in this house doing a $25,000 new design, wallpapering walls, some new furnishings, and getting all new professional pictures. This property is a 5 bedroom, 5 bath, in-ground pool, hot tub, golf front, like right on Front Beach Road across the street from the beach. So 53 steps to the beach. And this property in 2023 did $170,000. You think, oh wow, $170,000 is a pretty good revenue, and that's great. But they bought it for 1.3 million. And if you're doing the math and you do a pro forma on a $1.3 million property, and they only did 170, and you had to pay a property manager 20%, they were losing money. At the end of the day, they were losing about $20,000 to $25,000 a year over the first 2 years of owning this property. We came in, we told them in order for us to manage it, we needed to do some updates. We needed to make the property stand out. They didn't have a big budget because they were already losing money. So, we did some of the work honestly for free because we knew this was going to be a really great property and we could make a big impact for them. And today is April 30th. Again, $170,000 in all of 2023. We took over on May 9th of last year as the official day that we had our first guest going live, but we started taking bookings a little bit before that. And we are sitting at $213,000. So just around a 25% increase in revenue in the first year. And a lot of those summer bookings last year had that first, 20% off the first 3 bookings in Airbnb and Vrbo. And we did get 6 full bookings at that 20% off. So my estimation in a year 2 is that 213, we're going to get up to about the 225 to 230. And that's going to be anywhere between a $50,000 to $60,000. We've already increased the revenue by 43,000. So even after our cleaning fees or after our management fees, this ownership group made money this year. This is the first time in 3.5 years that they've made money. And we're starting to do some other updates now. We're getting a little bit bigger budget to do some additional improvements because now they're starting to see that doing these are going to make a big, big impact. 230. My ultimate goal is to get this property to 250. And I'd like to say we can do that this year. I think we got to do a few more updates to get there, but 213 to 230 is very, very realistic this year, and we will shoot for 250 in 2026 for sure. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Panama City Beach, just because that is my market. That is where I am a owner and a co-host. We have seen an influx in short-term rental deals in the Panama City Beach market over the past 6 months. Part of it is some people that didn't buy right, and they're starting to come to terms and they're selling their properties at a lower rate than they bought it from about a year and a half ago when everybody was in the buying phase. But what we're really seeing is more travelers coming to Panama City Beach because we're getting, we have a new Dolly Parton dinner theater, just like in Pigeon Forge. It opens on June 1st. We have a new Top Golf. Kid Rock is building a new country western bar on the beach in a partnership deal. We have a new Margaritaville resort. There is so much new development happening in the Panama City Beach market, which is also why it's a great place if you don't own here to buy here and potentially co-host here. There are 20,000 vacation rentals in this market. 10,000 of those are in the condo side of it, but there's still a lot of opportunity in the single family homes, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedroom homes. And I'm just going to be honest, the majority of the property managers, not all, do not meet the expectations of revenue. And I'll give one more prime example. We took our first ever PCB property that we took over to co-host. It was one of the larger property management companies down here that was managing it. It was a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, about a block from the beach, but you could see the ocean. You could see the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, whatever you want to call it, from the 3rd level. And this property did $35,000 back in 2022. And we took it over at the end of 22, going into 23. We immediately went from 35 to 65 without doing a single update. And then we did a few updates, made some changes, and we're up to about $85,000. So we have come close to tripling the revenue that the previous property manager did in this property. And if we can get the owners to add a pool this year, we're going to take this property well into the 120 to 130 range. So those extra added amenities and design make a huge, huge impact. So Panama City Beach is a great place for not only short-term rental investing, but also short-term rental co-hosting. So some key points about co-hosting that I want to kind of touch on, not so much going off of what's on here, is as a co-host, if you're wanting to get into co-hosting, it can be an amazing opportunity for you to not only grow your portfolio, make additional money, and help other owners. Like, it's a win-win all the way around. And, there are tons of people that have got into co-hosting just in the past couple of years that have grown their co-hosting business to where they left their W-2 job. So I have a co-host collective mastermind. There's about 12 people in my mastermind. All we do is we have weekly calls and we discuss nothing but co-hosting, acquiring clients, taking care of clients. How are we managing our properties to the best of our ability? How are we increasing revenue? And we just network and we talk weekly to be able to help. We also have a group chat, and we have had 3 people in our mastermind just in the past year that have been able to leave their W-2 jobs. We went from, in January of 23, we had, out of the 10 of us in the beginning, we had 0 co-hosting properties. And today, with the 12 or 13 total that are in my co-hosting mastermind right now, we've gone from 0 to almost 100 properties that we are co-hosting collectively across our mastermind. So, we have added a couple people to the mastermind that already had some properties. So that does go into it. So it really can make a huge impact on your life as a short-term rental owner and investor. And it also can make an impact for those that you're co-hosting for. It's, like I said, it's a huge, huge opportunity for you to make additional money. There are a lot of key points in co-hosting, though, that you have to think about. Okay. You need to have a separate LLC if you're going to co-host for other people over your property, the properties that you currently own, because when you own short-term rental investments, those are more passive income. They're going on a separate part on your tax. When you're co-hosting, this is active income. This is an active income business. So you're going to need a whole new LLC, a new bank account, a new EIN number, and it's going to be a whole separate tax return. You do not want to commingle your funds between your co-hosting business and your personal short-term rental that you own. They are 2 totally different types of businesses. So before you get into co-hosting, you're going to need to get that type of stuff set up. You're going to need liability insurance. I go through Wister, which is a spinoff of Proper. There are some other companies out there that do offer co-hosting or property management insurance. Just want to make sure that there's no exclusions to what you're doing. There is a lot of good, insurance companies out there, but you want to be covered. I do have the owners put me on as additionally insured for their properties on their insurance, but I also carry my own liability and errors and emissions insurance because I need to make sure that I'm fully protected. So you need to have that. You need to have your contract set up. You need to have your system set up, right? There are a lot of preparation things to get ready to start co-hosting. And you need to make sure you have all that in place before you go out and get your first co-hosting client. Now, everyone asks me, how do you acquire co-hosting clients? How do you find somebody that's going to say, yes, I want you to manage my property? And, it's not an easy thing. I will tell you that half of co-hosting businesses are coming through building relationships. And, real estate investing, real estate in general, this is a relationship building type business. You got to build a relationship. You need to be able to be very personable with people, face to face. You need to set up Zoom calls. You need to be able to build that relationship with any owner. Just sending some postcards or, trying to cold call is not always going to get it done. That might be how you have to get started, but building that relationship is really important. So there are a couple different ways you can find co-hosting properties. Obviously, lots of Facebook groups out there with investors. There's real estate meetups. Get out there, talk about what you're doing, talk about how you're getting into this business, talk about your case study for your property, right? If you have a property that you've built a case study and said, okay, I bought XYZ property, we are exceeding expectations, and we feel like we can do this for other owners. We bought our first short-term rental in early 2022. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, no pool, 3 blocks from the beach. And the revenue potential that AirDNA or other things showed was $35,000 to $40,000. Okay, we were buying the property for around 400, so those numbers don't work. But we knew what we wanted to be able to do, and we went in and redesigned. We added a tiki bar, we added a fire pit, we added amenities. We did everything we could do to this property, and we went from being that 35 to 40 that the property was before to $65,000 in revenue in the first year. And we were the number one highest producing 2-bedroom house in the entire Panama City Beach market. The next closest to us wasn't even at $50,000 on a 2-bedroom property. So we were almost $15,000 more. So I knew once we got into that and we started hitting the results that I could do this for other people. And if you have a case study like that, you're going to be much more successful picking up new co-hosting clients. So get in those Facebook groups, meet your neighbors, go to properties that you see some of these big property management companies on, find them on Airbnb, find them on AirDNA, look up their revenue numbers. And if they're not meeting goals, pick up the phone and give them a call and see if they're interested in finding a new property manager, because people change property managers left and right. It happens a lot. If they change it to you and you can co-host their property in a much more positive way and help them make more money, you're going to keep them as a long-term client and build a long-term relationship. So I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time here for Q&A. So please feel free to type in questions in the chat box if you have any. Rachel, yes, I do like Worcester. They actually have a brand new program that came out about 3 weeks ago. So we actually just switched over to it. It's a much better program for co-hosting. And it's also a lot cheaper than their old program. So, and I mean like $1,000+ cheaper. So much better program than what it was, because it truly is geared for co-hosting, not for full service property management. If you are a full service property manager, there are other insurance companies out there that are going to help you protect your assets a little bit better, because you are collecting funds and you are doing, trust accounting. Let me run through here and see if there's any other questions. Any other questions out there? Give it a minute. So I would talk to them about full service, Rachel, and see what they offer, and at least compare it to if you currently have one, and see if they what their information is. I've not talked to them about full service because we're not a full service property management company. We just do co-hosting. So that's the only discussion that I've had about them. I do know that there are companies like Hiscox that don't necessarily, that they have some exclusions in short-term rentals. So we were going to use that company and put that entire plan into ChatGPT, and it showed me places in their contract that stated that we could be uncovered in certain areas. So we ended up switching over to the Worcester plan, and it is very happy. Leah, for other data websites, platforms, obviously, if you're pulling up data to be able to find people to co-host for, honestly, Price Labs is one of my very favorites, because you can pull up your immediate area. You can go into the map view. You can find the properties that are close to you. You can find properties and look at their revenue numbers. I really like looking at Price Labs. AirDNA obviously is great. And STRIQ is one of my favorite data platforms because you can actually narrow it down and say, okay, on 5-bedroom houses within 5 miles, show me the bottom 25 properties. And then you can pull up those bottom 25 properties and say, this is the jackpot. This is where I can find properties to co-host. So that's actually probably one of the best tools, in my opinion, the STRIQ. So I have a ton of information on my podcast. I do have a co-host coach podcast. It is on Apple, Spotify, all that. Just go to your podcast platform, type in the co-host coach. My name, Joe Rohne. I think I've had somewhere around 30 episodes. Some of them are very just informative episodes to tell you about different things in the co-hosting community, or things that you should be doing. And some of my podcast, I do have other co-hosts as guests, and we talk about their journey, how they got started, where they're at, and some of their biggest obstacles. So definitely check out the Co-Host Coach podcast if you want any more information. And you obviously can contact me and ask me any questions. This is my barcode here. You can book a call with me. Be happy to talk to you about anything real estate related in the Panama City Beach market or the Florida Panhandle. If you want to talk about co-hosting, we can definitely talk about co-hosting. If you want to learn about our co-hosting collective mastermind, I can talk to you about that as well. But it is an amazing world, in an amazing community. There are so many awesome people in the co-hosting community. And I will tell you that, the last thing I will tell you is that many people say, why would you want to invite more co-hosts into the Panama City Beach market or into where you are? Doesn't that give you competition? I welcome it. I want more co-hosts that are going to manage these properties better. That's going to get us better revenue results as a whole, because it makes it a win for everyone. It makes my properties being able to charge higher average daily rate. It helps their properties charge a higher average daily rate. It helps our comps for real estate to be able to sell properties at a higher rate because we're making more money and more revenue for these people. So all of these are big wins. And I welcome anybody that can crush it to co-host in the same community that I am, because there is enough business for everyone. Like I said, 20,000 vacation rentals in our market alone. If we can have 200 co-hosts that have 10 properties each, we're still not making a dent in that 20,000 vacation rentals. We're still, competing with a lot of those big property managers. So it's a great thing. The final thing that I'll talk to you about is make sure that you look at your local laws on co-hosting. So every state is different, and you need to look at your state's laws on what it takes to be a property manager or a co-host. There are states like Tennessee that even without a broker's license, you can co-host, or I'm sorry, you don't need a broker's license to co-host or property manage, but you need a VLS license, and you have to apply and get a VLS license. So there are, tons of things that you can do as far as researching this, going to the government websites, local websites, whatever it may be. But you definitely want to make sure that you go on and do your research for your state that you're wanting to co-host in. And again, if you want any additional information, please reach out. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week on the Savvy STR session, and we will see you next week.